All right, so this video is going to be talking about the multiplier, what it is, how to find it, and what we do with it. So as we have looked at in the text and in the previous video, that there's a relationship between disposable income and spending. So when you get money of any amount, you're going to spend, say, a percentage of it. So for example, let's say we have a disposable income and consumption, and we have disposable income of, we're going to say 0. I'm going to spend 10 because, as we discovered last time, at very low levels of income, people what's called dissave. They spend more because there's necessary things you have to purchase regardless of income. But as we get additional income, then what's going to happen is we're going to spend a portion of that. And that, in an economy, again, not necessarily an individual, but in an economy, is a consistent amount. We call it, if you remember, the MPC, or marginal propensity to consume. So in this particular example, right, the MPC is for every $10 we're getting, we're spending, Let's fix that, huh? That's what I get for not paying attention. All right. So for every $10 we're getting, we're spending 8. So boom, 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 like that. All right. So the MPC is then 8 out of 10, or 4/5, or 0.8 is what we tend to use. Okay. We also know that for every dollar you get, you can either spend it or save it. That's it. So if you're spending 80 cents or 0.8 of every dollar, then that means your MPS, your marginal propensity to save, is 1 minus 0.8, which is 0.2. Okay, so your MPS is 0.2. So we know the MPC, we know the MPS for this. What the multiplier seeks to do is to explain how much change in equilibrium GDP would result from any change in spending. So fundamentally speaking, the formula is just, what you're doing with it is change in spending. I need one of those smaller expo markers. Change in spending times multiplier is going to equal change in GDP. Equilibrium GDP. And in this case, it's disposable income because we're in a simplified economy. So we just have income, personal income, right? The people's income, and consumption. Later it'll be investment, government expenditures, and later on, so on and so forth. So that's what we do with the multiplier. We basically apply it to GDP. Whenever we change spending of any kind, we apply the multiplier to GDP to figure out how much our GDP is going to change by. For an example, if GDP equals 100 and the multiplier is, we'll say it's a multiplier of 5, okay? How much will GDP change if we increase consumption, investment, government expenditures? Doesn't really matter. If we'll say, we'll do this. There is new investment of $20. No, that's off the screen here. Okay, so that's what we're saying. All right, like you'll see a question like this on the AP test. It'll be a little more complex, but it'll fundamentally be this. So what you'd want to do is say, just plug it into our equation. Change in spending, so that's $20 times a multiplier 5 equals $100 change in GDP. And if GDP was 100 before, new GDP would be 200. It's just like that. And it doesn't really matter where the spending comes from at all. It could be a change in government spending. It could be a change in investment. It could be a change in consumption. You could see something like individuals increase their consumption, autonomous consumption, by $5. With the multiplier, then you just figure out what GDP is going to change by. And to find the multiplier is relatively easy. The formula for the multiplier is just 1 over MPS. That's all. Just 1 over MPS equals the multiplier. Okay? So if you have an MPC of 0.9 and you know 1 minus 0.9 is the MPS, so that's 0.1, 1 over 0.1 equals multiplier of 10. That's all. It's pretty easy. Just 1 over MPS. Just remember that, okay? And in this class and on the AP test, you're going to be dealing with multipliers of 10, 5, 4, maybe 3, and maybe 2. Because the reason why is because those are MPCs of, let's do it this way. MPCs of, 0.9, 0.8, 0.75, 0.66, bar, and 0.5, and that makes an MPS of 0.1, 0.2, 0.25, 0.33, 0.5. So these correlate to these. And why that? Because if you do 1 over any of these, you'll get 1 over this MPS, you'll get a multiplier of 10, you get a multiplier of 5, you get a multiplier of 4, you get a multiplier of 3, and you get a multiplier of 2. Those are the easy numbers. The rest of the numbers are just, you get decimals and just gross stuff. You don't want that. And what we mean by the multiplier, what we're saying is that when you change your spending by $1, it turns in more than $1 worth of overall spending. And like, let's do it this way. If I, and I'm just going to go a few down the road, you can do the math on your own. But I spend $1, right? Somewhere. I walk into a store and spend $1. And let's say the MPC is 0.9, MPS is 0.1. Okay. If I spend $1, then that store is going to take that $1 and they're going to save 0.1 of that, and they're going to turn around and spend 0.9. So that's going to turn into 90 cents of them spending somewhere else. And that somewhere else, whoever gets the money, is going to spend 90% of that. And then 90% of that, and then I think it's 63. I think this is like 55. All you do is start with $1. You just start with $1 and then hit in your calculator times 0.9 and just keep hitting that button over and over and over and over again and write down the results. And you'll get a lot of numbers. It'll go like 4, 7, whatever it is, right? You'll get 3 columns of numbers. And when it gets down to 0.05 and 0.0, it'll be like 0.05, 6, 0.054, 0.052, so you'll have to round. You get a couple 0.05s, a couple 0.04s, like 6.02s, when you round. Anyway, when you get all that, that's all total spending in this economy. If you add all that up together, once you do that, like all the spending, you'll get $10 because the multiplier is 1 over 0.1, which is 10. So a change in spending of $1 will lead to total GDP, total spending change of $10. That's why the multiplier works the way it does. That when, in our other example, when we increased investment by $20, that wasn't the end of it. So yeah, we increased investment by $20. GDP goes up by more than $20 because you take that $20 and say I invested, I buy a cash register. Whoever made the cash register gets that $20. They're going to spend, let's see, in that case, the MPC was 0.8. So they're going to spend 16 of that $20. And somebody's going to spend 80% of that money. And whoever gets it's going to spend 80% of that money, so on and so forth. It's going to go all the way down the line until the money runs out completely. And when you add all that up, accounting for rounding errors and stuff like that, you'll get $100 total. So that's why we do the multiplier, and we can use that for a lot of, watch. Say we have, yeah, I see, I'll make this one easy. 0, we'll go with 8, okay, and then 10, and this is going to be 16, 20, 24, 30, 32, 40, and 40, 50, and 48, and 60, and 56, and 70, and 62, 64. 64, Tony. 64. And 80, and 72, and 90, and 80. All right. I know the line's not straight. I'm kind of trying to do this over my shoulder. So these are the possible combinations. And you could see that equilibrium is $40, right? Right there. $40. If we were to spend, let's just add government spending. If we were to add $2 of government spending, okay, so all the way down the road, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Remember, it's total spending that matters. That would give us total spending of 10, 18, 26, 34. Yes, I could be doing this off camera, but I want to do it on camera. I want you to see what I'm doing. So you're like, how'd you get that? Well, I'm going to just look. 58, 66, 74, and 82. Okay, so this is consumption. This is government spending. This is what we call aggregate expenditures or total spending. So this is the column. This is what we need to match up to GDP for there to be equilibrium. Previously, equilibrium was 40, right? But we now increase spending by 2. So since we know the MPC is 0.8, the MPS is 0.2, we know the multiplier is 5. So we know that if we increase government spending by 2, equilibrium is going to change by 2 times a multiplier of 5. That's going to be a GDP change of 10. So we should be at a GDP of 50 now. So we were at 40, we added $2 of spending, and now, total spending is at 42, which is inflationary. We have to find the number that the new equilibrium is, when we said it should be 50. And so we look at 50, 48 plus 2 is 50. So total spending equals total income, that balances. If this were, and I'm not going to do it, but if this were, let's say 4 instead of 2, or better yet, let's go with 8. Let's go with 8. Okay, if this were 8, right, instead of 2, we would have to change GDP. It would be a GDP change of 40. 8 times 5 is 40. So GDP would go from 40 to 80. All right, 80, 72 plus 8 would be 80. Okay, so that's why we do it. That's what we do and why we do it. So just as long as you remember the following things, most of the video was just kind of trying to explain the mechanics. But ultimately, if you're panicking, shut up, computer. What you need to know is the following. 1 over MPS equals multiplier. Okay, and then also know that change in spending times multiplier equals change in GDP. The tax multiplier is different, and we'll get to that, but not right now. Okay, so this is kind of what you need to know. So if given a problem, like if GDP is 400 and the MPC is 0.75, how much government spending would be needed to cover a $100 gap? It's 25, because the MPC is 0.25, the MPS is MPC is 0.75, the MPS is 0.25, which makes multiplier 4. If there's a $100 gap that needs to be closed, you change spending by $25. 25 times 4 is 100. You'd close it. Don't worry about that part quite yet if you don't need to. But if you get it, then great. All right, so there we go.